I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music. Today, we're going to do an album. It's a year old now. It's from January 2010. It's by these New Puritans, the new band from Britain. It's their second album called Hidden. And this is art rock. And if I were going to describe this sound, as far as current artists go, I would say, and it's very close to Menomena and Massive Attack. That's kind of what I see this being as. But Tom, what do you think?
I definitely agree with that. I can tell a lot of influence from early like post-punk, and then the kind of early like industrial phase stuff like Throbbing Gristle, The Fall, Joy Division, maybe even Swans, because just with that kind of apocalyptic, dark, noisy sound. But the thing I loved about this, as far as the sound goes, is that they were willing to keep that attitude and that kind of post-punk sound, but they're not afraid to use awesome modern production to thicken things up.
Right.
And you especially get that out of the drumming. The drumming is fantastic throughout this album, which is very militant.
Yes, there's what I would describe the drumming as, because it's a theme that the drumming is very, you can tell that they spent a lot of time deciding and strategizing as what they want their drums and percussion to sound like. So what you have is literally cadences.
Yeah.
Throughout the album, and you can tell that they have multiple like giant bass drums and just guys just going boom, 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 just literally making a beat, but it's more of a cadence because they'll get snares in there, and that goes throughout the album. And I think that in particular shows just how much thought went into planning this album.
Yeah. You know, I had a very interesting experience with this album. I'm going to get right to it. At first, I loved it. It was so alluring to me, just with that dark vibe, and it seemed so mysterious. I mean, I was thinking when I first listened that I was probably going to give this a score in the 80s. As I listened to it more and more, I think I would probably listen to this about 4 times. I liked it less and less.
Right.
And I think the reason is that as I got used to the sound and I was able to get past how cool that was to me at first, I realized that I just don't feel like there's a lot of really strong songwriting. I think there's some really cool mood pieces in here that transition. And you know, I mean, it's not like the songwriting's terrible, but it's just not fantastic. And also, like, the vocalist, I mean, you can tell these guys are young. They're very young. And especially in the vocals, I mean, he writes very good vocal parts, very good melodies. They work well with the music, but he's not quite selling them. I don't feel like he's really getting the oomph and the aggression behind his performance to make it believable. It's just kind of like darkly mysterious, which I know is a lot of the sound of that British post-punk scene back in the day, and he's really carrying that on. But I feel like the juxtaposition of the up-to-date production and the instrumentals, but then the old-school performance of the vocals don't really mesh as well together. And so I look at this track listing and I think, you know, this was okay to listen to, but not too much jumped out at me, not too much other than just the cool sound itself made me want to come back, because I just feel like the songwriting doesn't live up to it.
Now, something I really appreciate about Hidden is the fact that it is very much so an album listen.
Yeah.
From the beginning, Time Zone with an X. The band actually learned musical notation to write and compose that piece. It's instrumental. It's like a concert band orchestration kind of. And the main kind of refrain in that first song gets used multiple times as a refrain throughout the album, which is great albumization. It makes perfect for transitions and a straight-through listen. And the whole album is themed in production and lyrically and mood. I mean, it's just fantastic. And now I do think, though, that there are some tracks that are just stronger than others. I'm not sold on, and I know a lot of people out there like track 2, We Want War. I'm not sold on that. I think that I think the song sounds kind of flubby at times. I don't like the We Want War, and then the big, it sounds hip hop. It sounds like DMX is gonna come in and just start screaming at you about red lights sometime. Yeah, that's just a big beef I have with that song in particular. But there's a couple other songs in there that I feel are weaker, and there's some that I think are quite strong. And so I feel like there is a little displacement in the songs, but as an album, they do a nice job of making it an album out of it, which I always appreciate. Now, this album is superbly emotional. And what I mean for that, it's not emo, but it makes, you can feel I had a big emotional reaction to this where I was like, wow, this is moving. But then I realized that I didn't really care that much about this album and what it was doing to me emotionally, because I feel like that it's emotional without just cause. And I find this with a lot of art rock and artistic music in general, is that if you're going to be artistic, if you're going to make things moving and emotional or do crazy stuff, you also need to provide some sort of justification to listeners to seal the deal. It's the cause and effect relationship, but you're missing the cause. And I feel like that's a big misstep that a lot of bands can make sometimes, and I feel like it's made here, because I just don't have a reason to feel the way that I'm feeling. You know, the lyrics are moving, the music that they're making is moody and dark and moving, but why? What's the point? And I feel like I need more of a, I need something else there to complete the transaction in my head. Accountant talk. The debit and the credit needs to be there. But that's how I feel. Tom, you got anything else you want to throw down about this?
Not really.
I do want to mention that there's a couple songs on here. It's really cool how these New Puritans change the mood of the album, because overall it's very dark and brooding, but then on 2 tracks they kind of change things up.
Yeah.
Track 4, Hologram, and then track 10, White Clouds.
White Chords.
Oh, I'm sorry, White Chords. I'm sorry. And you know, White Chords is really moving, because he talks about how he has white cords running through his body and stuff, and I mean, I think that's just really moving.
It's really cool, and I love the way they incorporate strings and that kind of orchestration and composition in there. I'm glad they sprinkle that throughout. It makes it a lot less dull than it could have been.
This sounds kind of like something that Damon Albarn would do with Gorillaz, like a Plastic Beach on just like meth.
Yeah.
What would happen? But overall, I think that this is a cool album to listen to. I would recommend this. I want to know what people think about it, so leave us a comment at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. I'm feeling a 73 on it.
I'm going 67.
And that'll average out to be a 70, which I feel is a fair assessment. Now, I think that I will like this more with time, and maybe you guys who've given it a butt ton of listens will like this better. But I'm interested to see what these New Puritans do in their future albums as they age and mature as a band. So this is a great step for a second album, I think. But I think that about wraps it up, so let us know what you think. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, moving music critique forward.